Hey, what up? It's Quinn Chess, and today we're going over three puzzles that I solved on my road to 2500 puzzle rating on chess.com. So, in this first puzzle, we notice that there is a competing attack. We have Pete forces that are gathered on his f2 square, and he is eyeing our f7 square. In fact, if he takes on f7 with his queen, our king is forced to move, and queen takes g7 is checkmate. So, there's some urgency to deal with that threat and try to create something of a counteroffensive. I looked at queen takes f2 first. That was just where my eyes went. And what I found was that after that move, there weren't too many follow up checks that I could make. If he goes to king h2, queen f4 is not an option, and it seems like my attack stalls. The best that I can do is try to defend and hold on for dear life on f7. Instead, I looked at queen to f5, offering a trade of queens to his queen, and I couldn't find anything better than just equality from that position either. And then I noticed that his rook on a7 is actually undefended in this position, and that we can give a check on the first rank and force his king to the h2 square. And we have to find, like in geometry, an intersection between the squares that we can go to deliver a check on that h2 king and squares that can attack the a7 rook. It's just a matter of solving a math problem. And yes, chess can teach you these things, which is why it's a great pedagogical tool. So then I found queen to b1 check. Now, the point of this move is to give a check on the king, force him to h2, and after he moves there, I can give another check on b8, and this forks the a7 rook and the h2 king. That was the second move in this position. And after he blocks that check or deals with it in whatever way, we just take the rook. And we've also dealt with the f7 threat because now there's only one attacker and we have two defenders. So, what would have been better for him in the opening board position? Well, he could have played f4 to create some more luck for his king. King h2 is a prophylactic move to get out of any checks. Or he could put his rook on a2 instead of a7 and hit our queen, try to drive it into a different position. And the overall, the position is about equal in the opening board position. So let's look at the second puzzle. In this puzzle, material again is relatively even, but we have a passed h pawn here on the king side, and we're overall up one pawn. And we have this attack going on his f2 pawn. We already have two pieces that are aiming at it, and he's got two pieces that are defending it. So, how can we pile up and attack even more? Well, we can bring our rook into the attack on f8, and now we have three attackers on the f2 pawn, and he's got to find a way to defend that square. So, rook f8 is the first move. After rook f8, he could go rook e2 to defend his f2 pawn, but that would simply allow queen to c1 check. And after rook e1, which is forced, we're picking up this at c2 pawn here, and he's got a bunch of other pawns that are going to be falling as well, d3 and b2. And losing that many pawns in this position is going to lead to a decisive advantage for us. So after rook f8, he doesn't go rook e2, he goes king e2. And now we have a decision to make. Do we go queen to f2 check? Or do we go bishop takes f2? Or is there an even better move in this position? Well, our whole idea of converging on f2 was to attack that square and hopefully win material. So we definitely want to win that pawn on f2. Notice, however, that we're down in exchange in this position. He's got a rook to our bishop. So bishop takes f2 looks like a preferable move because it allows us to fork these two rooks on g1 and e1, whereas queen takes f2 check doesn't have that property. It only picks up the pawn. That's why bishop takes f2 is the correct move here. After this move, he decides to play a pin, which is very resourceful of him. He could have done that, the same thing with the e rook. He could have played rook e to f1 as well. And here, if we just carelessly take on e1, which I'm sure some people did and got the puzzle wrong, he can take our queen on f4 and we won't have gained anything, that's for sure. But we have queen to e3 check now. And the purpose of this move is to get out of this pin, forces king to d1, and now we can take on e1 and not worry about losing material. So that was the next move, queen to e3 check. And after king to d1, we just simply take, and we're not afraid of rook takes f8 check, king takes f8, queen f1 check, and after the king moves, he can take on e1 and recuperate some material, and then we take back with the queen. He takes with the king, and now there's nothing left except kings and pawns. But because we have these two passed pawns on the king side, it gives us a decisive winning advantage. Let's move forward to the third puzzle. So in this position, our opponent just moved his king to c5, opening up an opportunity for us. If you notice, we both have one queen, and only the black side has this extra pawn here on h6. So if we can find a way to promote that pawn, we would definitely be winning in this position. So the correct move in this position is actually queen to g5 check. And the good thing about this move is that it forks the g4 queen and the c5 king and forces a trade of queens because our opponent doesn't want to lose material here. After queen to g5, he's forced to take the queen, and we take back, and now there's a race of which king can get to in front of the pawn faster. If we decide to go to f6 after he plays king d5, here, if we go to king to f6 and try to go in front of the pawn this way, it would allow him to play king e4, shouldering the square, and we have to somehow continue our push up the board. Maybe we can play king to e6 or play king to g6, and now he's getting in front of the pawn with king to f3, and there's nothing we can do to stop him. And once he gets to g3, this position is a dead draw. We can continue with g4. He just simply retreats his king to g2. And after king to f4, he plays king to f2, seizing the opposition. And this is a known draw position that you guys should definitely study on your own if you need to. So instead of that, what we do is we go around by going behind the pawn and using that as an even faster way because he can't block us from doing that if we go further away from him. So the next move is king to g6 instead of f6. And he's again racing to try to get in front of the pawn as quickly as possible. And we go king h5. And after king to f3, there's a tempting move to play g4 check, but that would allow him simply to play king to g3, getting in front of the pawn, and that would lead to a draw. For example, g4 check, king to g3, and again we reach a position where he can get the opposition on f2, and that would lead to a draw. So we don't want to do that. And instead what we want to do is the only winning move in this position, play our king to h4. After this move, our opponent goes to g2 with his king, and once we have the opposition in front of our pawn, we're completely winning. But what if he doesn't go to g2? What if he goes instead to f2? Now, the only move that we have in this position is king to h3, creating a runway for our pawn to shuttle down the g-file. And this move also shoulders him from getting into the key square g2. We don't want him to land on that square unless we know we can get opposition. But it's our move, so we go king to h3, and this move is completely winning.